From Journey with VRD, you're listening to the Visions, Missions, and Manifestations podcast, the number one place for spirituality, healing, and transcendence. I'm your host, Vivian Raquel Dayan. Now let's get into it.
Yeah.
On today's episode of the Visions, Missions, and Manifestations podcast, we have personal coach Carol Braha, who prioritizes self-love and authenticity for those seeking a sustainable approach to creating the life they love. Carol, welcome to the Visions, Missions, and Manifestations podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Vivian. I'm so excited to be here.
I love your necklace. Is that a heart?
Yeah, it is. It's so funny. My mom gave it to me like 10 years ago, and nobody ever complimented it. And now, like, all of a sudden, everybody's noticing it when I wear it. I guess it came more in style.
I think I just love love. And like whenever I see hearts, I think it's like a wink from the universe or from God just being like, yeah, we love you. It's just more love energy. But I wanted to talk about the word coach and the term coach. Because over the past 3 to 5 years, I would say coaches have been coming up left and right. And I've worked with a coach since I was 12, but I feel like it's only become more mainstream now. So I was curious to learn a little bit about your journey on becoming a personal life coach.
hmm Yeah, so I definitely think it is popularized now, but I still don't think it's mainstream. Like, I still think people are questioning it, and like the legitimacy of coaching. And that's how I feel, at least as a coach, is like that people, they know what a therapist is and they're comfortable putting themselves in the hands of a therapist, but they're not sure exactly what a coach is. So I don't find that like in that way that it's mainstream because it's not fully accepted, I would say.
Mm.
And people are a little bit skeptical is what I find. But that's not about my journey to becoming a coach. That's just
No, I
so
love that point. I love that point.
yeah. But about my journey, so I was a teacher for 10 years and I loved it, but during COVID, I felt like they started to kind of put more pressure on our schedule and just like the principals and things like they just started being much more in control of like my life, as a teacher and then I was just and like even with the vaccine, like I wanted the vaccine, but the idea that somebody was telling me like you have to get this or you can't come back to work. Like I didn't like this idea that somebody was going to be controlling me for the rest of my life. And I said, okay, I have to get out and just figure out how to build something on my own where I could be fully in control of my own schedule and make of my own life. And I guess my favorite part of teaching was the social emotional component. And so I was dating someone at the time, and I told him like I wanted to become a coach for intuitive eating because that was a big part of my journey was overcoming like the diet mentality and learning to be an intuitive eater. So I really wanted to go into that, but he had a life coach and he loved his life coach and he was like, I think you would be a great life coach. Like, why don't you just talk to my life coach and maybe she could tell you about the program she did. And if after you do her program, you still want to do intuitive eating, you could take it in that direction, but at least you'll have options. So I spoke to her and she like made an amazing career from the program. It's IPEC is the program that
Oh,
she
I
took.
love IPAC. Yes.
Yeah. You're familiar
I
with
didn't
that?
go through it. My mother went through it. She finished it
Oh,
and she loved
wow.
it.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. So she told me about it. And I was like, you know what? The worst thing that happens is I come out with skills for my own life, right? Like it's like nothing bad is going to come of me enrolling in the program. If I don't end up becoming a coach through IPEC, like at least I'll have learned skills to coach myself.
Right.
So I went into the program, and on the first day, I was just like, I love this thing. And I loved it from like really from the first second. Like I just felt my mind expanding because they talk about how like you're only limited by your beliefs. And all of a sudden, like I just felt all these beliefs in my mind being broken down. And I saw how expansive everything was. And I loved teaching, but in that moment, I saw how it was really limiting me and how like I had such a ceiling on the capacity of my growth as a teacher. And like, I just felt like, wow, I really had spent my whole life believing that there was a ceiling to everything and like there isn't.
It's in your mind. Your
Yeah.
only ceiling is the ceiling you put on yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Wait, so that's incredible. What grades were you teaching when you were a teacher?
I was a middle school teacher.
Wow.
Yeah, I
So
loved.
it makes sense. Like, even though you're not teaching in school anymore, you're still teaching your clients. And then, so what? It was like 5, 6 years ago that you shifted from teaching to coaching?
Less. It was more like 3.5 years.
Wow. And
Yeah.
do you have a specific niche? Like, what do you coach people on?
So, like I would say my niche, like you mentioned, is self-love and authenticity. Because growing up in the community that we grew up in, like a tight-knit Jewish community, that doesn't leave a lot of room for authenticity. That's the truth. And so I think in my journey, there was one way that I was supposed to be, and I wasn't filling that role properly, and it left me feeling very lost.
Mm.
So I had to realize that there is no perfect role or role that I have to fulfill, and that everything is just about being who I am and leaning into the person I am on the inside and not trying to fill some external box or expectation. So that journey for me was tremendous. So that's why I wanted to become an authenticity coach. But when I say that, nobody knows what I'm talking about. So like I learned not to overuse that word because people don't really get it. And I coach people in everything. And at the heart of everything is authenticity. Like that's the truth. Like if people are unhappy in any way, it generally comes back to they're not following their voice inside or they're not in alignment with their values. So I'm trying to learn to kind of speak of the problems that an inauthentic life creates instead of focusing on the word authenticity because I realize people don't realize that like what it means and how authenticity or inauthenticity is impacting their lives.
I love it. And it's also so cool to hear because, like, we are both coaches, but it sounds like we run in completely different circles where, like, my audience always speaks of authenticity and our authentic code and the pillars that make it up. Like, I'm living much more in, like, the spiritual wellness realm.
Like maybe you're the people who like run in your circles or like are more already immersed in the
Mhm.
personal development space. So
Mhm.
they're very familiar with the terms. But I feel like a lot of the people who find me or who have found me, like they were just in a space where they're unhappy. And so like they don't realize why, which is normal, right? Like we don't realize why when we're in the beginning phases of unhappiness. It takes becoming unhappy and then doing the self-discovery to figure out what was really going on.
Oh, I love that you said that because I don't know, it must have been like 10 summers ago. I was at an event with Joy Duche and I said to her, do you think that if somebody doesn't go through a trauma or, it could be a little T, big T trauma, that they won't wake up to this type of work,
Mm.
you know? And she's like, no, I think like also curiosity can, but I think it's more of a passion for those who have gone through something and woke up to this.
Yeah.
In the beginning of this conversation, of this episode, we were talking about coach, and you said, I feel like people are still skeptical about coaches. Can you define what a coach is in your own words?
So like in IPEC, what we like kind of focus on is the idea that coaching takes people from functional to optimal, right? Like so,
Mhm.
but I think people don't know what that means. So the way that like I explain it is like a lot of people, if you ask them like, "Oh, how are you?" They're like, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. It's life. It's life. It's like," but it's like you don't have to be just fine, right? You don't have to like you could be so much more than fine,
Mm.
and that's what's coaching for. Like you don't. This is what I really like to say. Like you don't have to tolerate life. You can enjoy life.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. And so, what are like myths you'd say people have around coaching?
Well, I don't really know because I try to stay out of like spaces that would bring my headspace down. Like, but I think, like I think it's just that something that people would expect a coach, like, is like they always say, "Oh, what? So you're just going to tell me what to do?" So I guess that would be a myth about coaching. I don't know what other coaches do, right? But like I know the proper way to coach is like, no, I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just bringing their own thoughts and feelings and experiences and patterns to awareness. And then we can discuss what they want to do from there, right? It's like I help them find awareness, and from through awareness, we find further discovery and take more action steps toward where they want to go. right? So it's like awareness of where you are now and awareness of where you want to go. And I help you figure those two things out and then bridge the gap. But I'm
Mm,
never telling anybody what to do. And especially not as an authenticity coach. It's always like going back to the client. If somebody wants to do something that I don't like, I'm not going to be like, oh, that's not a good choice, right?
right.
Like, okay, if you want to do that, like, like I don't like running, but if somebody wants to run a marathon, I'm going to support them in it. I'm not going to tell them, I don't like running. And,
Right.
so like, I think that's a big myth is people think that coaches will tell you what to do and they'll tell you what to do based on what they enjoy. And a good coach won't do that at all.
Ooh, I love that. That's a
Yeah.
great differentiator. And then for those who don't know what the term authenticity means or being authentic, how would you describe that?
So it's being true to your inner voice rather than like the outer voices. It takes a lot of time to really figure out that you're living inauthentically. And I think it looks different for everybody, but it's this idea of like trying to get external approval. So
Mhm.
doing things because, oh, they're gonna like me, they're gonna admire me, trying to get status. Some people really enjoy wearing nice clothing, right? And that could be authentic. But some people wear nice clothing just so that other people will think that they look good and that they have money and that they have status. So I don't think any external action is in itself inauthentic, but I think the reasons behind it could be inauthentic. So authentic actions would be stemming just from an expression of your inner being. And an
Mhm.
inauthentic action is like a need doing something because you're trying to get an external approval.
I love that. What are some practices or rituals do you provide your clients with around finding their authenticity?
So, okay, this is really the one of the biggest things in authenticity coaching and all coaching. Like it's what are the thoughts you're having when you do that? It's really important, right? Like if somebody is taking an action, I would ask them like, okay, like what's driving you to take that action? Like what thoughts are you having? And if a lot of times it's something like, oh, they're gonna think I'm not good, right? Like I'm doing that because if I don't do it, people will think I'm mean or they'll think I'm thoughtless or rude or whatever. Like it's a lot of times coming from that. So like we get to the heart of that thought, right? Like you need like it might be something like you need to extend yourself to others even when it drains you because that's the right thing to do. Like
Mm.
people have that thought because they've seen other people in their lives do that and tell them that that's the way to be. So so like getting to the heart of their thoughts and like really figuring out what belief that maybe they saw their mother do or a sister or an aunt or they learned in school about the right way to be. So it's like these like absolute beliefs about what's right or what should be. So a lot of times those things are driving people and they're not their actual belief.
Mhm.
If you're doing something that's not your actual belief, you're going to feel drained from doing it.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say these are practices that I have people do on their own, but these are the things I try to get to in coaching. It's like, what is that belief that's driving you? And can we rewrite it to one that's more aligned with the life you want to live and who you want to be? And also, what are the areas of your life that are draining you? Because if you're being
Mm.
drained, it's an inauthentic situation. So,
Yes. Yeah. Something I always share with my clients is how when you're living your authentic life, you fill up your cup and
mhm.
you're living in your truth. And I recorded a podcast episode last week where I talked about how when I was younger, like a child, ages like 3 to 9, my parents would always say, go give your great grandparents a kiss hello. And I hated it. I hated
Right.
it. I hated it. I hated it. It would make me cringe. And I
Yeah.
talked about how when we do things because somebody else wants us to do it, and from a young age, like being punished for not doing it, what it teaches a child is not to trust their own feelings. And as an adult, the repercussions of that could be always looking for outside validation. Am I doing the right thing? Am I sending the right text? All
Yeah.
because we learn to not trust our feelings.
Right.
So
Right.
that was such an interesting point. I love how you answered that question.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow.
So you talked a lot about how people in the community and people in general can often feel like there's no room to be themselves. And I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. Well, I will say on my own personal journey, I'm not shy to admit that I'm turning 36 soon and I'm not married. And genuinely, authentically does not bother me, right? But when I was in my 20s, it bothered me so much.
Mm.
And it was because I didn't have my own compass yet. And I was living my life trying to like fill the expectations that were always placed on me and every woman in our community. And when I didn't, and I was not a rebellious person. I am a free thinker, of course, like I'm intelligent and I have a very thought and like, a deep brain, but I was never tried to be rebellious. Like I always thought I would follow the path, right? Like, so I thought I would get married in my 20s and have kids and live the typical life in Brooklyn. And when that didn't happen for me, I was very lost because it's like, okay, if I'm not following this path, what am I following? And if I didn't fulfill my destiny, like, what's my worth? So I really had to like when I didn't fall, it was a blessing, honestly. Because at some point in your life, you're gonna wake up and realize that you've been living in a box. So I'm lucky I went through it in my 20s and now I can live the rest of my life free. But for me, it was personally that I didn't fulfill, the expectations. And then I was lost and I had to find my own inner guidance. But it took years. And until I found it, I was depressed.
Are you okay sharing what that journey looked like for the listener who's like, oh, I'm in the same exact boat that Carol was in?
The truth is, I had to hit a really dark point
Mm.
before anything got better. It's very scary because when you don't know anything outside of what you know, you can't find solutions. And so, like, there was no way for me to think my way out of the depressing thoughts I was having, right? Because I was not fulfilling the role that I was meant to be fulfilling. And that was all I knew. So I was a failure, and that was all I knew. There was no way to think outside of that because I did not know anything outside of it. And I was a very like worldly person compared to other people in the community, like I had traveled, I dormed in college, I had friends outside the community, but even so, it's so ingrained in us that like I was a failure, like so I couldn't so I think the first thing I would say to people is like you need a coach or a therapist because if you only know what you know and your thoughts are the thoughts that led you to depression. So if you need to find a way out and even if you're not depressed but you're just really sad with your life situation, like your thoughts are not the thoughts that are going to solve the problem. You need
Mhm.
somebody to bring in new thoughts and to show you a new way of thinking. That was the biggest gift of therapy for me was like that I had somebody show me that there was another way to be.
Hey, loves, it's Vivian, and I'm popping in with some incredible news that I couldn't wait to share with you. If you are loving this episode and you're ready to completely transform your life, then this is your sign. Picture this 4 unforgettable days in Sedona, Arizona, February 14th to the 17th, surrounded by the breathtaking red rocks and powerful vortexes with a group of like minded, soul centered women who are ready to manifest their dream life. Sound like something you've been wishing for? At the Sedona Manifestation Healing Retreat, you'll experience deep heart opening exercises to connect with your authentic, truest self. Guided meditations and experience energy healing to amplify your manifestations, workshops designed to attract soulmate friendships, relationships, and align with your purpose. And that's not all. You'll also receive practical tools to carry these transformations into your every single day life. The retreat is not just about manifesting. It's about healing, connecting, and stepping into the version of you that you've always dreamed of. Here is the exciting part. Due to an overwhelming response to this retreat, we were able to open up the retreat space to just one more person. That's right. This is your moment. If you've been waiting for a sign to say yes to yourself, this is it. To claim your spot, DM us on Instagram with the word Sedona. Our Instagram handle is @journey with VRD, or visit our website to learn more. But don't wait, this last space won't last long. And let me just share this. We've got some amazing sponsors who are making this retreat even more magical. Bond Charge will be gifting our guests premium science-backed wellness products to enhance sleep, recovery, and overall vibe. Anima Mundi Herbals, my go-to for opening my heart, third eye and crown chakras, and the Alchemist Kitchen, and so much more to support your healing and manifestation journey. This is your chance to manifest what you've been dreaming, hoping, and longing for in the most magical way possible. Trust me, you do not want to miss this. I can't wait to see you there and witness your transformation. Let's quantum leap into Sedona together. This is going to be so much fun. What an incredible journey and an honor and privilege to be there with you. Now, back to the episode. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we don't have all the answers. If we
No.
did, we wouldn't be in a bad place to begin with. We need outside help sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a beautiful gift that it exists.
Hmm.
So I would say my therapy was the first step. Then Brene Brown.
I love
Yeah, her
her.
work definitely helped me. It's all about being authentic. So that was the first time I touched upon the themes of authenticity. With my therapist, it wasn't. He was just like saving my life. But my with then so I don't know. Someone just recommended Brene Brown's book to me. I read it and I was like, oh my God, like I could just be me. Like that was the first time I ever like had that thought of like, wait, like I'm a person and I could be myself. Like it was so radical to me that I didn't have to look outside of myself and that like I could just be and be free. And of course it didn't happen immediately, but it was the first time I ever had exposure to that idea that like I could stop looking outside of myself for approval and instead just like be true to the inner voice. I didn't know what the inner voice was, but I that was the first time I heard it. And then moving to the city, like so I'm a big believer of changing environments. I think there's a lot of emphasis on be happy where you are, use your brain to change what you see around you and whatever. And it's like sometimes you just have to move. Like sometimes you just gotta move. Like it's not all about like seeing the best in your situation, right? Like sometimes it's like get out of there and then start seeing the best. So moving out of Brooklyn and to the city was the best thing for me. The day I moved, I remember just like feeling so much lighter and like I went to like the coffee shop and I was just like, oh, it's so nice to not know anyone here and to not be judged by like everybody in the community who knows me, like it's a fresh start. So that was very healing for me. So yeah, therapy, Brene Brown, moving to the city. Then I was really coming out of a depression. So yoga was very big for me. And that also requires a lot of authenticity because it depends where you go. Obviously, there's a lot of like power yoga and things that are not authentic. Like, like they push you to reach outside standards. But when you practice yoga in like a true yogic environment, it's all about listening to your body and honoring your body. So that was huge for me. I had never listened to my body before. I didn't even know I had my body telling me anything. So yoga was very healing for me. And then I was also just looking for new hobbies in the area. So, to make friends or just get out of my apartment. So, there was a Kabbalah center near me. So I was just like, okay, yeah, I'll go. It's a 10-minute walk. Like that's how I was really basing my activities. Like, are they easy enough for me to do coming out of this depression? So it was 10 minutes from my apartment. Um, and I like learning and it's just you sit there, it's easy. So I went and that was honestly like one of the final pieces in my healing was like that spiritual component because my therapist was wonderful, but he wasn't spiritual, and like none of the things I had done up until that point were really spiritual. So that Kabbalah like really gave me that piece of connecting me to the universe, which was the final piece, I would say.
I love that. I have so many
Yeah.
questions to ask you to break down the story. How would you say spirituality helps you in staying authentic and true to yourself?
So I think at the time it wasn't about that. It was more realizing that the universe was on my side.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was the biggest piece of Kabbalah for me was like that the universe was there for me, not against me. Because up until that point, I felt like I was being knocked down over and over and over again, and it was like a why me situation. And then Kabbalah made me realize like, oh, it's for me. Like it's here to teach me, it's here to guide me, it's here for the best. So at
Hmm.
the time, that's really what it was for. Does it help me remain authentic now? I think it does because I know the universe is with me. So when I'm aligned, everything is aligned with me, like the universe aligns with my alignment. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just like I feel like when I'm
Yes.
in my most authentic self, like then everything around me kind of like is attracted to me more authentically.
Yeah, and I also feel like it takes a lot of the pressure off knowing that the universe is on your side, that everything's happening for your benefit, for your success, allows you to take a deep breath and release so much of the pressure of like, is everything working out? And go into scarcity and go into doubt because
Yeah.
you know that the universe is on your side.
Right. Yeah, it was such a big thing for me. It was really the final, yeah, I would say there's one piece that was actually the final piece where everything came to play, but that was the second to final piece was like the spiritual moment. I would say the final thing for me really was when I went back, like so I had been teaching in a school in Brooklyn. And that's where like I was not aligned with my authentic self. It's where I was failing to, be married, and everybody in the school was asking me, why aren't you married? And I was an excellent teacher and everybody loved my class, but even more importantly, when was I getting married? And it was
Mm.
like so then when I moved to the city, I took a break from teaching. I only tutored in the city for a bit, and then I went back to teaching. And this time I went back I went to a school in the city that was like a pluralistic school, so like more open-minded, and nobody asked me when I was getting married. And I went in really as my most authentic self.
Mm.
And, I didn't wear makeup. In the first job, I did wear makeup. And it wasn't that I knew I was being inauthentic, but it was like, oh, yeah, how am I going to get people at this job to respect me? I'm going to put on makeup, But when I went to the next job, it's like, I don't want to be respected for being pretty. I want to be respected for being a good teacher, and for loving my students, So I went like as my most natural self, feeling very authentic, and everybody loved the way I was teaching. They loved me. And I was like, okay, now I'm loved for me. And I know at the other job, they loved me for me too. But like, I always questioned like what would happen if I came in without makeup or without looking perfect, And in my second job, like I didn't ever question whether I was being loved and honored for who I was. So that was
Yeah.
honestly my final piece.
I think it's a really important aspect to dive into for everybody to think about, okay, does my boss fully value me for me? Do my friends, are they people that fully see me, support me, and I don't feel like I have to hide aspects about myself too? And this helps us navigate not only our relationships, but are we being authentic in our relationships with different people? And if we're not, then we're not in alignment. We're not in our truth and authentic
Yeah,
self,
for
our
sure.
authentic self-worth, right? Like our idea of our worthiness starts to lessen as we have to hide different aspects and question different
Yeah.
aspects about ourselves.
Right, for sure. And I'm not saying like wearing makeup is inauthentic, but I'm saying the reason why I was wearing it was an inauthentic reason. Like at my first job, like it was like, okay, how am I going to make these students fall in love with me and listen to me and the principals respect me and I'm going to look pretty,
Right.
like, and it worked. It really did. But like it didn't feel as fulfilling as if I said I'm going to do it based on, my smarts and my personality, which would have felt a lot more authentic.
I wonder, do you have a daily ritual or routine that you do that helps you stay authentic and true to yourself?
The truth is, I am so authentic at this point that I don't need so much a ritual for that. I will catch myself if I'm not authentic, but I
Mm.
do have daily rituals around gratitude. And that I think has been tremendous in raising my happiness, like so big. So yeah, in the morning I have a morning gratitude practice and an evening gratitude practice, and they're both very informal and very easy to do. But I do them every day. And it really helps me see the good everywhere I go and just realize how much I have to be grateful for. And even if things don't always go my way, like, okay, at least I know that I have so much.
Mm. Do you want to share what those practices are?
So they're very simple. So the gratitude practice in the morning, I have like a journal for it on my website, but you don't have to use the journal or do it written. Like I just do it. I don't do it written. So my whole thing in coaching also is just like make it easy. Like I'm not one of those coaches that's like, let's set these like crazy ambitious goals and redo your whole entire life and become like a, like it's not sustainable. I'm all about like make it easy. Let's find sustainable things. So, yes, it's more powerful to write something it's also less sustainable, right? Like not everybody is going to bring their journal with them everywhere they go and sit down and take the time to write. So you could do this like just in your head when you're brushing your teeth or drinking your coffee or whatever. Like you don't have to write it. But so I do 5 things that I'm grateful for in general. So just anything in the world that I'm grateful for. Then I do 4 things that I'm grateful for or that feel good in that exact moment. So like touching into my senses more, like if I'm drinking coffee, like the taste of the coffee or the smell of the coffee. If I'm just looking at the trees, like, oh, it's so beautiful to watch the trees blowing in the wind. And it's like really just tuning into like my senses and the environment that I'm in that moment. And then I do 3 things that I'm grateful for in the future, but I say them as if it's like the present.
That.
Um, yeah, and then I say 2 things I'm grateful for about myself, like my personality or just things that I love about myself. Um,
Wow.
yeah, that's the practice, 5, 4, 3, 2. And then at night, I just say 3 things that I'm grateful for specifically from that day.
Ah, I love that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love
And
it.
what has been the transformation since starting this?
So the 3 things I'm grateful for from that day, that I started when I was depressed, like to come out of depression. It wasn't super impactful, but I knew it had to be good for me, so I stuck with it. But I was so depressed that like that was not going to save me, but I stuck with it. But I will say those 3, now I can't stop. Like I go on to like 10, 15, 20, like because when you start to look for things to be grateful for, you start seeing them everywhere. So that biggest impact has been that now I see blessings everywhere. And then the one in the morning that fully transformed my like I would say like when you come out of a depression, you're treading water, right? Like you go from drowning to treading water. Like you are staying afloat, but it is hard work. And that gratitude practice in the morning took it from being hard work to, okay, I could float. Like it
Mm.
really took away that struggle. So it was very, very powerful. I would say it took about 5 months to really like kick in the effects. Obviously, it's beneficial right away, right? It's never going to hurt you to be grateful, but I would say after 5 months, I really saw the effects, and now it's been probably 2 years.
Wow. I actually
Yeah.
heard recently somebody say when you're in a state of gratitude, while you're writing or you're thinking or you're sitting in the energy of being grateful and thankful, it's actually impossible to think negative thoughts. So it doesn't mean that you won't think negative thoughts after the
Right.
practice, but
Right.
while you do it, you're so focused on the gratitude that the negative thoughts don't have space to come in. And I
Yeah, I
found
would
that
say
so
that's accurate.
powerful. Yeah,
Yeah, that's definitely accurate.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
So I'm curious, who would you say your ideal client is?
It's hard for me to say because I feel like I love working with everyone. Like, like I kind of build an ideal type, but then like if really like out of that box, people come to me and I work with them and I love it. So I would say the most ideal thing for me is somebody who is ready to change. Like that's
Mhm.
really my ideal client is somebody who's ready to change. Like I only had one client who I worked with and like she that was very hesitant to change. Like she would be like, "Oh, I don't like this about my life." And then like we would start to talk about possible changes or whatever. And I'm very gentle, so it's never anything like crazy, but like anytime there was like any sh shift, she would be like, "Actually, it's okay." Like she didn't like, and I was like, "Okay, this is not a good." I told her it's not a good fit. So I would say that's my ideal client is somebody who's ready to change. I'm happy to be patient in the process. Baby steps is fine, but it's like you have to want to change. Um,
Mhm.
so that's really ideal for me. And then I guess somebody who, but this sometimes people don't know until they start coaching, but like somebody who doesn't want extreme things. Like I don't believe in extreme changes. I believe in slow, steady growth and I believe in growth through compassion. And I think those like bigger changes are always coming from hate. They're not coming from compassion. They're coming from like, I hate the way I am now. I'm a disgusting person and I need to change this. And they want to do something radical. And like, that's not my style at all. But sometimes people have to come to me and think they want that radical change. And I humor it for a little bit. And they see it's not sustainable, and then we do more of like my way. But
Yeah.
um, I like so. If somebody knows that about themselves, no, they would not be my ideal client. If they know that they want something radical, it's not for me. It's not my type.
Can you give an example of radical change for the listener who's like, wait, I'm not sure if I lie under that?
So like I think most people probably are going to think that they lay in that category because it's how we're taught to make changes. But like if somebody wants to go on an extreme diet, right? Like I believe in intuitive eating, and the same way I approach eating is the same way I approach everything. So it's like I let my body guide me, right? I'm open to the feedback, I'm open to the changes in my body, I'm open to being a human. And a lot of people are not open to being human. A
Hmm.
radical change is like when they want to be as set as a machine, right?
Mm.
So like, oh, I want this change in my life where every day I'm going to eat exactly this way and I'm going to exercise exactly this way. And they want to be a machine. That's what I consider a radical change, where it's like I want to go from being a human with human f flaws to being a perfect machine that operates perfectly.
Mm.
Um, and I believe we can be a human that is flawed and continue to be a human that is flawed, but just find ways to improve ourselves while accepting who we are as humans.
Yeah, and I'm a very big believer that we're not meant to be perfect because if we were all perfect, life would be extremely boring. And
Right.
so it's finding like our flaws and the things that we think we don't like about ourselves and actually realizing that those very much can be our superpowers that lead us to our purpose.
Yeah.
So,
And if not, we could still approach them with kindness.
right.
We don't have to hate ourselves because we have flaws. Like that's part of life. It's part of being human. It's okay. And learning to accept your flaws with kindness and compassion, instead of hating yourself for having flaws.
I think my favorite book on this is Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford. Have you ever read that?
No, but I will.
Great, amazing, amazing book. You talked a lot about how living outside of the box, and I'm curious to hear how you live outside of the box or outside of like the matrix that the community tries to make you believe that you are, the expectations they have on you. How are you breaking the expectations and societal norms?
Been doing this for so long, like let's say like 8 years already. I've been living authentically that it's so hard for me to even remember what it was like. Like what, like it's when people like when I'm beat with my clients and like they tell me the things that I had once gone through, right? But like they tell me about the way that there's the societal expectations and whatever. Like in my head, I'm just like, this is still happening. Like because I'm
Mm.
so far gone from it that I just it's not even a part of my life anymore that I forget that like it's still a part of everyone else's. Like I can't believe it. Like it's just like it's so that is like so far-fetched to me now. Um that like yeah, I can't believe it's still real, but it is. It hasn't really changed. Like I mean, I think the thing is we think our community is unique in the roles that they like really push people into, but it's really worldwide. It's the same thing. Like it's just that we're in such a microcosm that like the pressure is higher, but like it's the same standards that everybody has, right? Like to a woman should be skinny and pretty and that's it. And a man should be rich and a woman should marry a rich man and they should show their status off to everybody. And that's what matters.
So I'm curious to know what expectations have you thrown out the door and what do you no longer carry?
Yeah. So definitely for me, makeup was a very, very big thing. I used to like really be afraid to leave the house without makeup. Like really afraid. Like if I went out, I would feel like naked and I would just be like, I hope nobody sees me because if they see me, they're going to see that I look ugly and they're going to say that that's why I'm not married and they're going to judge me for being ugly and not wearing makeup and not getting married, like
Mhm.
so it was such a big thing for me. And I think as women, like we're told the most important thing is that we're beautiful, of course. There's no doubt that that's what we're told. No doubt. So nobody's ever asking us what our gifts are. No, like no. Nobody, so the biggest thing for me like was always feeling like I needed to wear makeup. And it was not coming from an authentic place. It was coming from the need for approval and the need for people to know that I'm pretty and that that's not the reason why I'm not married, like, and I didn't want them to say that I was imperfect or that I had flaws and, point out reasons why I wasn't married. So makeup was definitely a very big thing for me and always needing to leave the house with makeup. And when I went through my authenticity journey for years, I did not even put on a speck of makeup because I didn't know how to wear makeup authentically. And I didn't want to
Mm.
risk putting it on and falling back into like the loop, and I knew I was just trying to be true to myself. So I did not wear makeup at all for probably like 2 years. And then it's funny because my therapist is a man and he helped me through this even though like you wouldn't think a man would be able to, but like he helped me understand that style is something that is an expression of your inner being. So if you're feeling like you want to have variety or get dressed up and it's coming from like a true place of like, oh, it would be fun, like then you could authentically wear makeup. But if it's coming from a place of, oh, I need them to think I look good, then it's not authentic. So when I learned that balance, so like, now I'm wearing makeup for this podcast, but it's not a lot of makeup or anything, but like I'm saying I put on makeup and it doesn't feel inauthentic at all. It was just like, oh, we're playing dress up, we're having a but like but like today I was at the pool, if I did not wear makeup and I'm staying at the one hotel and everybody is wearing makeup at the pool, and like I didn't feel insecure not wearing makeup because I knew that if I did wear it, it would feel weird to me. It doesn't feel like a true expression of myself to wear makeup at the pool or to wear makeup during the day. Like I just don't, but if I'm getting dressed up or going out or whatever, it's fun to put it on now. So that was huge for me, learning how to wear makeup authentically.
I love that.
Yeah.
A big priority in your 20s was, okay, I got to get married. I got to find the guy. I need to be pretty. And now coming out of the depression, moving into your 30s, your mid 30s, and really owning yourself and being this like badass independent woman who lives a very authentic lifestyle, working from wherever you want, really, because your job is remote. What would you say now your number one priority or your value is? Because I'm guessing there's so many listeners who are in your shoes and they're like, wait, I could want something else other than my end game being marriage. So for that person who has to be like, well, what could it be? What would you say yours is?
Okay, so this is a little sad to say, okay, but in my 20s, when everybody was getting married, it looked great. And I wanted it. And now that I'm in my 30s and they've all been married for a while, I see it's not great.
Right.
So, it made me realize that marriage is not the answer. So, being married to the wrong person is the worst thing you could do for yourself. So I no longer feel like I'm failing for not being married because I see that married doesn't mean anything. Married to the right person means anything. And I don't care how long I have to wait for that. There's no timeline for that for me. I do want it. So that is still something I want in my life, but it's not on a timeline at all. Right? Like it's like I want to wait until I find somebody who I'm going to love being with and who's going to make me happy and who's going to enhance my life and not just somebody to give me the title of wife.
Hmm.
So I still do want that. But I would say the most important thing for me is my authenticity. It really is always staying aligned with who I am. And it's also loving myself. Being a best friend to myself is so important to me. And I really am my own best friend, and it's the most powerful thing I have in my life, honestly. Like I'm getting emotional talking about it because I didn't always love myself, and I didn't know what that even meant. And I remember being in a yoga practice coming out of my depression and like I was taking a restorative yoga class and the teacher was like so zen and he was talking about like self-love, self-love and I was like what is he talking about? Like I literally could not even understand, He's like talking about loving yourself and I'm just like what is he saying? And I just like got up and I had to leave and I was crying in the bathroom. I'm like what is he even talking about? You could love yourself? I hate myself. And I like that was the first time I ever realized like I didn't know there was another way. So now, like, I'm my best friend in the whole world. I love myself so much. Every time I catch a glance at myself in the mirror, I tell myself how much I love myself and how beautiful I am. And it's not even that I'm looking at my face and whether it looks pretty, right? It's just like I'm beautiful from the inside to myself because I know who I am for myself. I know what I bring to the table to myself. Like I know how I guide myself through life, and I love myself for being there for myself. Like I really picked myself up from the darkest moments and brought myself to life. So, loving
Oh,
myself is my priority.
looking back, what's something the version of you today would tell the version of you who was at her lowest?
That gets better. I definitely didn't think that it would. Like I was saying, we only know our own thoughts, right?
Mhm.
So I was so stuck in the darkness of my own thoughts that there was no possible way it could be better. All I knew was darkness.
Mhm.
So, for anybody who feels that way, like it really can get better, and it's a miracle that it can because it's a whole new brain that I have. And it took a lot of work, but it really gets better if you put it in the work and you find the right help.
And I'm curious to know what your sixth sense, your spiritual gift, or your superpower is.
I would say, probably my empathy
Mm.
and like my love. I think I really do have a very loving heart, and it's hard because the world is like a tough place. It's hard to always remember to stay open and loving, but I know that when I am in my heart, like that's when I'm my strongest for sure. That's when I'm my most powerful.
How do you keep your heart? What's a practice that you do to keep your heart open even when things feel like the walls are closing in on you?
It's really hard. One of the practices that helped me a lot, but I don't practice it regularly, but it was something that helped me when I needed it. Because like I think I had gotten myself to a place where I was no longer depressed, but I had lost my heart. And when I went to like this meditation retreat where we did loving kindness meditation, that was when like I got back in touch with my heart. And I should do that practice more often. But it's basically like you imagine yourself like showering other people with love using
Mm.
your heart and like covering them with like a golden glow of love. And like you can picture people who are very close to you. You can picture acquaintances, and you can picture people that you hate or have like, animosity toward, and spread your love toward them and imagine your love healing them. And then also you can do it for yourself. And I think that was one of the practices that got me back into my heart. I try to stay there because I know how much better my life is when my heart's open.
I have to ask, because this is the Visions, Missions, and Manifestations podcast. What is your biggest vision and mission right now, and your biggest manifestation, something that you're looking towards accomplishing for 2025?
Honestly, so we just had New Year's, right? And I was thinking of like my goals. I was working with all my clients on their goals, and I honestly was like, wow, like I'm so happy right now. I actually don't have goals. Like I was like, I just want
Mm.
being happy. But so that's in my personal life, like and in my day to day and whatever, like I don't have goals for any changes I want to make. Like this is the happiest I've been in so long. Like I don't want to mess with it. But I would say, professionally, business wise, like I definitely want to grow my business like big time. Like, so my goals are all focused around my business. I want more one-on-one clients. I want to do group programs, and I want to make like pre-recorded courses that people can buy. And I want to speak at like big events.
Mm. I love that. So, how would you like to grow your impact in 2025?
So something that's very important to me, is I want people to know that they matter and that they're enough as they are. Like I just want people to realize that they matter. Like they don't have to do anything more to become important or to become of value, right? Like they matter as they are and they're worthy as they are. And um, I want them to kind of like make changes from that place of worthiness. So I want people to see themselves like how I truly see myself and hear for myself as my own best friend. Like I want everybody to kind of take that position in their lives and be like I'm important as I am, I matter as I am, I have value as I am, and I'm here for myself, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna guide myself toward more because I deserve it.
Mm. I love that. And it's so powerful. And it's
Yeah.
also what helps you get to here.
Yeah.
So, if anybody wants to work with you or find you on Instagram, how would they do that?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Carol Braha Coaching, and they can also just email me at carol@carolbraha.com, and I'd be happy to work with them.
Yes, it's amazing. Thank you so much, Carol.
Thank you. It's so much fun.
Hey, if you like this podcast episode, please download it, give us a nice review, and follow us on Instagram at Journey with VRD to get all the latest and the greatest updates. Till next week.